Today we're going to talk about the migrant experience. Because I was a migrant, my parents immigrated firstly to France,
Cocorico.
and um, my parents first immigrated to Australia, then we to France, and then we stayed there 1 year. Then we immigrated to Australia, and I stayed there for 23 years. Came back and I became a local. We're going to talk about the experiences of the migrants in their chosen country and how the locals felt about them. We have the guests Tom Sequitur, Will, uh, Ralph from the channel Not None of the Above. It's a very good channel. Everyone should check it out. I'll put the links in the description afterwards. We have Boris, who is a Colombian Chinese from New York who lives New York. What the hell am I saying? From Hong Kong, who is a French person as well. So we have a quite a varied group. We will also be getting some more guests as the stream comes along. Okay, people. Um, for the migrants, the first experiences. How was your school uh, days? Some of you are at school still, but how do you feel? How did you accept, or how were you accepted at school by the locals? Anyone wants to start?
Well, Ralph can start, no?
Ralph?
Okay.
Ralph?
In my experience, school was actually all right. I mean, I didn't necessarily feel out of place because the school I went to was a multicultural, multi-ethnic school. So it wasn't like I was the only black guy in a surrounded by white people sort of thing. And also I must add that in my early childhood I did sort of jump around the place because of my dad's work. So I spent a little bit of time in Ethiopia and a few other countries, but most of my schooling was in the UK. So I can only I can I'll mainly talk about the UK for the sake of this hangout.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. You mentioned you weren't the only migrant, I will say migrant, or person of color, people of color, black, whatever you want to be. I don't care. In your school, did that influence anything that you noticed? Did you?
Um, I mean, not really. Is I suppose the only thing really that I noticed was you sometimes sort of got, you know, blacks would sort of hang around with each other, or Asians would hang around with each other, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of kind of common or expected. It's sort of if you hang around the sort of same roughly cultural group because you feel more comfortable with that, I guess. But
Yeah, that's slightly different from what I've experienced. I'll let you
But,
guys
but
speak.
but it
Um,
wasn't there wasn't but it wasn't always like that. I mean, there was
mm,
people have friends of different races and ethnicities as well, but it also
yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
That's what the Greeks said and the Italians when the schools I attended. I was the only Portuguese in both primary and high school, so you can see where that's going. Yeah.
Hmm.
Boris, wanna?
Oh, me?
Yep.
Well, I can talk from both because I think both are quite interesting and
Mm,
shaped a little bit my views on Western society and systemic racism because uh, I I was born in Hong Kong, lived there for 12 years, so I did my primary school there.
mm-hmm.
And the thing is that if you want to talk about systemic racism, there is a real one in Hong Kong. Like you don't need to go that further and conspiratorial to dig one. If if you have, for example, two parents from foreign origins, um, and the child is still born in Hong Kong soil, it wouldn't go to Chinese school. It would go to how do you call it? Centre étranger, which means of Hong Kong school, but for foreign people.
Stranger, the foreign section.
Yeah, the foreign section. Luckily, my father was Chinese, so I was a mixed breed, and in the school I was the only mixed breed, aside from my sister, of course.
Yes.
And well, it wasn't pretty, to be honest. And well, I'm not going to exaggerate much, but the teacher talked shit about my parents, student talked shit about me. I mean, yeah, I got the total. And then later, when I came to France, unfortunately, I came to a little village, which is not, and which is Cambrai, by the way, a little town, not village. And the school wasn't as multicultural as Ralph claimed to be. There was like, well, there were Arabs. There were 2 Asians, I believe, and a few black guys. And well, in Western countries, the school was a public school, and the teacher. When I came to France, I didn't know how to write, didn't know how to read, barely spoke the language, and the teachers were adorable. Like these were some of the best teachers I've ever encountered, because they volunteered for propping my level up. Like they know that I was better in English than everyone else. So what they did is that they made me skip English classes so that I could learn French with in those hours. And normally these French teacher, those who volunteered, they weren't working at that time. It was their rest hour, yet they still accepted to do it for students like us. So yeah, that's what I will say about schooling, I guess.
Any of you, both Ralph and Boris, ever getting into any fights, for example, with the other students?
No, I was a clean kid at school.
Well,
I
yeah,
did.
I'm not people who fight others. So yeah.
Well, I got involved in a fight nearly every third day at school from high school on. At primary school, no, but at high school level, the first fight I had was my second day. I was at year 7 when we start high school. Uh, year 11 students. Year 12s would not get involved. At the time it was the year that you want to get into university, so you don't give a shit about anyone else. But year 11s and down felt that they were the bosses of the school. So what? They pick on the year 7s, and guess what? I was the only Portuguese there, so I had to fight. And my second day at school, 2 Greeks and an Italian approached me. One of them was bigger. I can't remember because it's just so far back. He wanted to beat me up basically. So I'm gonna fucking hit you, and I didn't think nothing of it. I just lunged at him. He was the biggest guy there. I grabbed his head in a headlock and started punching his nose. The other 2, at first they were shocked, and then they started hitting me. But because I was supporting myself on the other guy and just keep punching him. I was badly beaten, but not as badly beaten as the one I was beating up because I broke his nose. The other 2 bruised me a lot, and the big guy stopped the other two more smaller ones, and I threw him off and said, "Who's next?" They backed away, and that was the end of the fight. That would be a weekly occurrence until I was in year 12. So, yeah, I had a lot of fights.
Did you get?
Yeah, well, that was an old thing, isn't it? Like in the older generations or in older movies in high school, like people always fight each other. Today is not the way it is.
I mean, in my school there was a few fights, but they didn't really involve me.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
neither. It was
yeah.
Arabs fighting each other.
Yeah, I would say
Mm.
100%. socioeconomics, the poor schools have a lot of fights. I mean, I used to go to one of the middle class schools, and there were rumors about the poor school. And then when I went there to pick up my friends, it was as bad as they said. Kids fighting in the halls, kids fighting in the fucking front, kids meeting up right after school to kick the shit out of each other. It's just not everyone's like that. Not all social groups are going to behave like that.
Yeah.
And welcome to my chat, Hagbard.
Yeah, how
And
you
that was
doing?
that was a nice introduction. Now the other Tom, how did you experience the migrants that came to your area, school, etc.?
Well, I grew up in a rural school, and really the only migrants we had were exchange students. And I'm telling you, everybody loved them. Uh, well, I guess there was a few of us that were jealous when they got the chicks, but what can you do, right?
Exactly. Yep.
But we didn't have no problem. And my school was all white. There wasn't a Latino in it. There wasn't a black in it. But we would get exchange students from China, Brazil, wherever, and they were always, we just loved them, the hell out of them. So only when I got into the military did I start seeing the racist stuff.
That's interesting. Yep. So I assume well, that puts you out on would be my next questions, neighbors and neighborhoods, Tom, Hagbard, your neighborhoods, culturally, just what's that
Well,
word?
where I grew up, I mean, to say that there were migrants is an understatement. I mean, I grew up in Florida. I mean, fuck, it's like 60% Hispanic migrants.
Oh yes,
And my
Cubans. How
neighbor,
were the Cubans?
oh, the Cubans are fantastic. Oh, Cubans over almost every other island people, please. I mean,
Hmm.
just truth be told, I mean, then this is their hierarchy. If you want to discuss with an island person the hierarchy, it's really ugly down there. Um, they racially profile the fuck out of each other. Do not confuse a Dominican and a black person. A Dominican will very specifically say he's not black, he's Dominican, and he's very
Uh,
clearly African.
in contrast to the Haitians, for example.
Yes, who very specifically want to emphasize the fact that they're black Africans, in spite of the
That's
fact that I
interesting.
think they're 25% Indian, as in not Native American, but actually shipped in from India, Indian.
Because what about the West Indian countries, the former British and French colonies, and except for the Hispaniola island, that's slightly a different case. But yeah, anyone in
I mean, the
America?
only problem I think I've ever had was with Haitians. I've never had a problem with any other island peoples. But Haitians have a tendency to be very, very violent when they have their gangs.
So
But
I
that's
grew up on the. Sorry if I'm cutting you off.
no,
Just tell me to shut up. I grew up on the west side of Los Angeles, and we have a really strong busing program. So basically, the whole city kind of mixes its stuff together. And generally, what we found was that everybody was sort of sharing the same space, but there wasn't an enormous amount of mixing outside of the sports program. Particularly, I guess sort of the Latino and black guys would not. I mean, like, they just wouldn't be in the same classes. They were allowed to take those classes, they just didn't. And I guess I was in all the classes where it was just white people and Asian people, and that was just pretty much my experience with that. There was no problems in those groups. There were problems outside of that. I was not especially aware of it because, again, they were. I mean, they could throw a rock and hit one of these guys. They were right there, but there wasn't an enormous amount of social mixing. They were just there.
Um, Will, you told me that you're third generation migrants. Do you know anything of either your grandparents or your parents' experience in that?
They did. Okay, so they came over after World War II, and they didn't really have any problems. There was a really. This is prior to the whole multicultural thing. So they had a very strong sense, and the country had a very strong, uncomprehending notion of integration. Welcome to the United States. You're going to be an American. Here are the forms. Figure it out. So they went through Ellis Island. They had to be sponsored to be in the country. So there was some family already in the country, and they had to take legal responsibility, financial responsibility for my grandparents when they came over. And that, of course, put an incentive on them to get jobs and become self-supporting as quickly as possible because, hey, we love you and all that kind of stuff, but we don't necessarily want to provide you food and housing forever. How about you get a job, huh?
Really good policy, man. Really good policy.
And that was how that worked. And if for whatever reason the sponsors flaked out, didn't want to pay, didn't pay, then the people that were immigrating either had to find another sponsor, as in another person willing to personally take responsibility for this person, or deported, and as in actually see you goodbye.
Yep. Ralph, how was your parents' experience, your mother's experience in that? Did it anything you want to say, Ralph? Okay, we'll get back to Ralph anyway. While that, I'll tell my experience. My father had to immigrated to France when he was 15 years old. He had to jump the border because Portugal was under one of the Western Europe's, along with Spain's, most brutal dictatorship. Franco and Salazar were fucking cunts. So he jumped the border. We have a dry border in where I live. And then he had to actually basically wade a river in winter to get to France. My grandfather was waiting for him. He paid a passer, a guy that accompanied him through Spain under Franco's rule, you might add, until he got him to the other side into France. Once he was in France, de Gaulle just basically gave him his papers. And he worked all his life until he came back with a passport. He never changed his citizenship. He came back to Portugal. He got married with my mum. I was born in '67. In '69, we went to France. We stayed there in 1 year in Paris, in what I think now is a heavily Muslim area. It was Villepinte in Saint-Denis, near where they built the new stadium for the World Cup or Euro 208 or something, 98 or something. The Stade de France, that's where it's made. My dad then went to work in Guyana, in the European Space Agency's launch site. He built one of the buildings as a worker, while he was applying for these immigration papers to Australia. Australia were welcoming migrants because they needed the labour force, and they couldn't get any of the white people, so they started to bring in the the olives, basically, which is the Southern Europeans, Italians, Greeks, Portuguese. Except that where I live, we are not olive, we are more white because we are the Celtic part of Portugal. Yeah. My daughter and my son are blonde, so that will tell you guys. I stayed there until '93, so that's my migrant experience. And Ralph's still offline. So we can go on to another.
Hello.
Oh, Ralph, do you want to tell us how oh shit, I forgot what it was I was talking about.
His parents experienced.
Exactly, how your parent experienced your mum, because you told me that your mum was a migrant. How she experienced moving to a new country and that. If you want to, just general stuff.
Well, initially she went to Ireland to get university education, and then afterwards she moved to the UK, and she integration wasn't really a problem for her because she spoke English fluently anyway. Well, because Nigeria was a former colony of the British Empire,
Yes.
so everyone spoke English, can speak English, and she came from a middle class background. My grandfather or her father was an army major in the Nigerian army, so there was some benefits because of that. Yeah, so I mean, integration, or she sort of fitted in pretty well in Britain.
I seem to see that our immigration has integrated very well in the countries we chose. This will lead on to a little bit later on, if you want to continue or not. But it'll lead on to the second part of our the program that I have done. So we'll just keep that in mind. The neighborhoods uh, I assume that the migrants that our grandparents, parents, us, etc., lived either with people of the same background or not. Anyone?
Well, my mom, when she moved to England, lived in London, and yeah, she lived with other Nigerians, you could say,
Mm-hmm.
or amongst, or where she lived, there were Nigerians there. Can you
My
hear
mom, when she was younger, pretty much dated everyone, so I guess it wasn't a problem for her to stay in. Well, anyway, she looked white, so it's not a huge problem.
me?
Well, it's definitely a bad deal. I mean, to get into enclaves and not assimilate into the culture. You guys all agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
because that's sort of part of the pattern of the immigrant experience when you have sort of waves like say the initial Jewish immigration that came into the America and even in Britain initially they there were sort of Jewish enclaves, you could say, like the East End of London back in the late 19th century, early 20th century was a massive Jewish enclave. And then when they rise up the economic ladder, then these enclaves sort of disappear and they just move out
Yeah.
to different parts of the country. So that's initially how it starts.
We in Australia, I can talk about the Greek and Italian experience, even the Yugoslav experience. They did initially have certain areas where they congregated most. One of them now in Melbourne is probably one of the most famous streets you can visit if you ever go to Melbourne. It's called Lygon Street. It's practically Little Italy. It hasn't now just got Italian stuff, cafes, restaurants, groceries, and that. It's been more diversified with Vietnamese, Lebanese, um, Albanians, and all other ethnic groups. It's one of the hubs of Melbourne. Uh, Even it was a hub when I was there, not before 1993, and it's just been better because of the foodie revolution that everyone's been seeing with MasterChef and all that shit. Yeah. So I think we've covered most of the things. How have you seen? Have all of you seen, either the locals and the migrants, seen the changes in neighbourhoods, assimilation, second generation or third generation or even fourth generation migrants that you've encountered in your day-to-day life? How have you guys have um, basically noticed any change over time. Some of you are still too young to notice because, yeah, there are a couple of us here that which are fucking old cunts. So, me and Tom and that.
Ask me because I'm kind of too young to sort of say, oh, I noticed the change, because this is really all I've known in Britain. It's kind of hard to ask me about this. Though,
Yeah, I agree with Ralph. I couldn't well, I couldn't see the change anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and the region I'm from, it's been standard since I was young, so I've never known any different myself. It's always been a pretty steady trickle in my region.
I can now going to speak a little bit about Portugal's experience. I feel that I have to because fuck, I'm the only Portuguese cunt here, and I'll make it brief because I know Portugal bores a lot of people. I'm not offended. I hate Portugal as well, so yeah. So, as a local, I've experienced a lot of migrants coming into Portugal since I came to Portugal in 1993. We had two great events. One was the Expo 98, which we built a bridge just for that event, and we built a third of a city where they have the aquarium, they have restaurants, they have a superb train station, bus station, hub thing. I've been there twice. It's absolutely awesome. And the metro, it is efficiency I judge to the level of at least Australia, but I think it's British efficiency. The trains, if they're not on strike, which is becoming rarer, are very much on time and very well kept. Now, between 97 and 2008, 2009, when was the great financial crisis? Wasn't it 2011 or 2008?
2008.
It was 2008.
Yeah, 8.
Thank you. We had in Portugal Brazilians, a lot of Brazilians, Angolans. Well, I won't mention the former African colonies because they consider themselves Portuguese when they're here and not Portuguese when they're back at home. So, Brazilians, a lot of them, Ukrainians, Romanians, both the good ones and the gypsies. We had a lot of Poles.
Oh, back up. What do you mean by that?
That's slightly bigoted.
No, because they pissed on Portugal's gypsies. I'm defending Portugal's gypsies. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's defending his ethnic gypsies. That's fair.
Exactly. They are both Roma. But one seemed to be more honest than the others. See, that was probably my most xenophobic comment you will ever hear from me saying that. But
Next thing he will say is that we should gas the Jews.
No, never. Gas the Muslims.
You heard him.
That is.
Let's go.
Yes. But okay, I won't say too much bad about the Romanian gypsies. All they did was beg, so they weren't that bad. I had to sort of contrast them with the Portuguese gypsies where they go to our fairs. You know, England knows it, and America sort of imitates the fairs, but we have them weekly. Every day has a certain fair in a certain town. So the Portuguese gypsies would just basically sell socks, shoes, knickers, and stuff, while the Romanian gypsies would beg. That's what I meant by saying the bad gypsies.
It's okay. We understand that even V, who lives in Romania, hates the gypsies. It's fine.
So, And 2007 to 8, we just lost every basically foreign ethnic group. I am trying to find foreigners that from Europe at least close to me. There were Romanian, Ukrainian workers in my little bloody town. The only foreigners which I have now here are Angolan, Santo Tomé Prince, former Portuguese colonists working in our restaurants and that we have in here. We have three restaurants, two hotels and stuff, restaurants and hotels, and that's where the migrants that I experience here. They are well liked. They are fun people. We treat them as, okay, you're working here, cool, you're working. That's how Portuguese people see migrants. But there is racism. I'm not saying there isn't, but it's mostly exhibited in football supporters. Even though all the Portuguese clubs have mixed groups of players. If the enemy, you call him names. Oh, you fucking black cunt and that. Even though you have 7 or 8 players in your team. See what I mean? That's our experience.
Well, it just sounds like a bunch of lads ribbing each other. It doesn't sound like real racism or anything to worry about.
We had when I came here, we had certain racist groups, but Portugal, because it had a dictatorship. We don't really want any authoritarian rule at the moment. I think I've repeated this many times. I might stop repeating it, but our most leftist party and our most rightist party would be considered in America, for example, center, because there's just little touches of differences.
Yeah, you're arguing nuance at this point.
No, yeah, nuances, but in a level that's just so restricted. It's basically 2 or 3 degrees left of center either way, and instead of the 80 degrees either way in, say, America or a lot of countries in Europe, for example. Our Communist Party would be like the Socialist Party of France. How leftist would that be? Not much, because France has an even leftist party, more leftist than that. Our our Christian Democrats would be basically shit. No, I can't find any American examples. Canadian, I don't know. Spain is all over the place. Britain would be
Merkel's party.
which one?
Angela Merkel's party.
No. Even less, more to the center of that.
So like a center.
Yeah, they're basically centrist. No radical either way party can get enough signatures for them to get actual their name on a ballot. They need about 20,000 signatures to get a name on a ballot, to get their party on a ballot registered. No one signs to the ultra left or the ultra right here. Even our monarchy party can't get enough signatures to run an election. Fuck.
It sounds like you're disappointed about that, Carlos.
In some ways, yeah, because I grew up as a citizen. No, I consider Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II my monarch. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't.
Americans don't have a lot of respect for that.
It's one of the flaws of my country, sadly, the monarchy.
We could have a monarch here. we have an heir to the throne. His name's Don Duarte. That will translate to, oh God, I'm a bit too drunk to remember, but never mind. He would do as well a job as the presidents, which are the figureheads. They don't really have any they have no veto power in our laws. They don't do anything. They just can send a piece of legislation to the constitutional court to judge it and stuff like that. So that would be my experience as a migrant. Yeah. Now, we've talked about our experiences. Now let's contrast modern times with the Muslim migrants. I think we have various points of views on that. Who wants to start? I can start by saying that Portugal wanted to have between private property owners and our government 6,500 people, migrants, Syrian migrants or whatever, but only 165 of them arrived and took up the offer.
That's not
They got the minimum wage social payment out every month. That's 500 euros.
And that wasn't enough.
Yeah, they got a house, free education, free medical cover, and that's it. I know they've been showing in Portuguese televisions about 3 families of the 162 people that supposedly came here. I suspect that they can't find the others because they're not here anymore. And why is that?
You know,
I've said this before. Portugal's a shit country, so
I
they
was
don't want
going
to
to
come
say,
here.
you make yourself sound like this stinky kid inviting everybody over for a birthday party.
Exactly. But joking aside, Europe does have real problems between the migrants now because they don't want to assimilate. I've
Well, come on. I
presented
mean,
a
let's be
case.
serious. If these people were migrants that were fleeing from war, they would take up the 6,000 person offer Portugal put out.
I'd
I mean,
expect they should, but they haven't.
yeah, it's just further a case for the fact that it's just economic migration to countries that are stupid enough to hand people free money.
Yeah, I think part of it is, I think Castro, or Carlos, you were telling me yesterday or the day before that you don't let them live in an enclave. You intentionally spread them out. So that I think was the killer deal for them. You know.
And
Absolutely. I know. I found out that we have 52 mosques in Portugal. I thought there was only a few in the major cities. I don't know how they are spread out, because in Braga, the closest city which I am living next to, I don't know of a mosque. I know there are 15 Jehovah's Witnesses, about 10 Mormon churches, things, and the other evangelical stuff. But in Braga, I don't know of a mosque.
Everywhere?
Sorry?
Those weird religions are everywhere? You have Jehovah's Witnesses over there?
Oh yeah, there's Jehovah's Witnesses in my central town. I've actually engaged them and I frightened them away.
why? Because
So
your profanity.
I just started talking about evolution. They just no, actually, at first I started evolution, then I started quoting Bible quotes, and they said shit. Well, they thought shit. They know he knows the Bible better than us.
I had something that worked really good on them for years, and then they come back again finally. But this guy, he would come by once a week, drop off his Jehovah pamphlets, and I'd take them, and I'd take them, and I'd take them. And then he finally asked me, well, can we come in and talk about all those pamphlets? And I said, no, I've been using them to light my fires.
Oh, awesome.
That's the way they use them, too.
Anyway, Carlos, I got to go set up my live stream. You guys come on over if you want when you're done.
Yeah, man. Not gonna. How long's this been on? About an hour and a bit. 44
Yeah,
minutes. 44
yeah,
minutes. I don't care making this long. I just want to get good points through.
yeah.
And I'd like to how you guys thought of this. How has it been going? I think we've covered all, but we really haven't even covered today's. Just want to make the last bit. Today's migrants. Why aren't they assimilating? You've pointed out that Portugal, we don't put them in ghettos. Um, I would love someone else. I'll put the a link in the war room in our Skype thing. I would
Well,
love someone else.
if you
I've
don't get it
invited.
yeah, if you don't get it figured out today, let's take that up
Oh,
next
for
week.
sure,
Yeah,
absolutely, or another time. No problems with that.
yep. All right.
Um,
See you in a bit, Carlos.
See ya, man.
Take it
I'll,
easy, bud.
Yep.
Yep. See you guys.
I've sent invites to a few others, to Nay, to Kraut, Feminist Flow. I would love to hear from him because he's a migrant living. He lives in where in America, right, or Canada?
I believe Canada.
Yeah, and I would love to hear him. He's excellent in that. But if not,
Yeah,
I'll
right now he's
send.
against Indonesian.
Yeah, I've sent. Well, I'll send the Naked Ape if he wants to come in. I've already put in the bloody war
He's
room.
probably asleep.
Yeah. Well,
That
if you
monkey
guys,
sleeps.
sorry.
I said that monkey sleeps forever.
Yeah. So if you guys are comfortable in wrapping this up, I don't want to stretch this out artificially. I think we've covered basically everything which I had planned in my amateurish way.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I'd like to add is just from sheer observation and from studying the texts, they're told to not break their families up. They're told, I mean, it's akin to like what you'd hear from the old Black Power movements in America, which were heavily influenced by the Nation of Islam, which was obviously heavily influenced by Islam. The Imam is more powerful as a fist. The Imam is more powerful together. And if you
Yeah.
separate the Ummah, then you've weakened Islam as a whole, and that's not the goal.
Can I say, like, from the British experience, like, it wasn't always this way. Like, the first sort of wave of Muslim immigrants are not the same as the third generation. Because like the first generation were religious, but they sort of like wore their faith lightly. Like, because you would have men who drank alcohol, women didn't. Very few women wore what we call the hijab, that headscarf thing, and they visited the mosque occasionally. And then the second generation of immigrants, so people sort of my mother's age, were actually secular. As in, a good deal of them were secular in the sense that they struggled against they wanted equality. They struggled against racism that they faced at the time, and against the religious obscurantism of their parents. And then it's only the third generation, to like people sort of my age or a little bit older, who are these you find these sort of really regressive, ultra conservative views in. Did you hear that?
Yes, yes, yes. It's not been noticeable that especially the last about I've noticed it about 7 years
Yeah. So like
that
basically what you would find in some families, Muslim families, and I've seen this myself, is you would find like girls my age or a little bit older wear the headscarf thingy, whereas their mothers didn't. and wouldn't. And
They
I
have a
think
word for it. Does anyone know the word for it? I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's like called re-faithing or reconverting or
uh,
the Islam specifically has a word for like becoming more Muslim.
revive, or is it in Arabic?
Revival.
Yeah, revival.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's the Western word for it. They say reconverting or something like that. Like if you
Oh,
stopped behaving like a strict Muslim and then you came back and put the headscarf on and all this other stuff, it's like reconverting or some shit. I'd love to know it off the top of my head, but
revert.
yeah, reverting.
Yeah, but they only say that
Reverts.
for
Yes.
converts. They only say that. They only use that word for converts because the belief is that we are all born Muslims, but our cultures and our society sort of move us away from Islam. So that's the reason why Portuguese people are Catholics and not Muslims.
That adds up. I'll take
Uh,
it.
we are at the moment we are exceedingly secular, even though our national religion, sanctioned by the government, by the public television and everything, is Catholic. You'd be hard pressed to find it'd be about 86%, 85%, or 83% secular at the moment. We're losing converts at an extremely rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Even the new religions like the evangelists are finding it really difficult to come here. Brazilian evangelical sect had a little spike in the mid 90s, the early 20s, and they just fizzled out because people were saying, "Fuck off! We don't want to be. We're too secular now."
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
well, the evangelical movements require momentum. And if you can't continue that momentum and get new converts, it kind of makes your whole movement look impotent.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and I have my own theory of why there's this sort of quote unquote revival of say Muslim identity and zealousness among say the third generation of European Muslims, or in my case British Muslims.
mm.
Hello?
Yes. Keep going, Ralph. We're
Okay.
listening. Yeah.
Because basically in the late 1980s is when these questions about cultural differences and multiculturalism started to come about, and I'm talking about the British context. And it's only then did we start imagining Muslims as the Muslim community as one sort of singular, homogenous sort of block, and sort of ignoring the various sort of diversity and differences within that group. And
Yeah. Could that be a factor that so much Islam revivalist, you say, because maybe certain aspects of the societies in the West have just clumped all the Muslim
yeah,
followers into one. Because I know, as as a
I
historian
put,
and that,
sorry, go on.
uh, um, even within the Muslim countries in the 70s or even before the 70s and that, they, for example, had there's a meme going on in Twitter where he showed the traditional dress of each culture from Egypt to Pakistan to Afghanistan. They were colorful, they were no hijab and all that, and started what in the 90s, for example. That shift to more fundamental Islam. And I'm not saying fundamental is fundamentalist as a bad name because it's just going back to the root of the book. You can
Yeah,
have, yeah. It's not a bad name saying fundamental or anything. It's just saying it's the essence of that religion, of the religion, fundamental. That's the correct term of it, in fact. And could that be a factor that the West could not, well, England, France, Germany, and so uh, um, could not grasp the different cultural nuances, I hate that word, of each of the Islamic cultures, societies that the people that came from and immigrated, they just lumped them in together. As
Yeah.
you're a Muslim, even if they came from Indonesia to Algeria, they lumped them together. Said, there you go. Could that
Yeah.
be a factor? Anyone?
Yes. And because of that, you empower sort of the most sort of reactionary sort of leaders, quote unquote leaders within those communities, and they have a lot of influence. You know, and that's not the only reason. And there were other sort of more political, geopolitical reasons why sort of you have this, what we have now, like, so to speak, the collapse of the left because of the fall of the Soviet Union, the rise of identity politics. Then you have sort of international developments like, such as the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, and the Bosnian War, which sort of helped foster this heightened sense of Muslim identity and this sort of Muslim victimhood that you
Mm-hmm.
often see, because in Bosnia Muslims were being massacred by Serbian Orthodox militias by Milosevic and those guys. And then you also had the growing influence of Saudi Arabia on Islamic institutions, schools, etc., in the West, and their aggressive promotion of their sort of particular strict brand of Islam.
Yeah, well, and back that with also their new lapdogs of Pakistan.
Yeah,
And
yes.
with that combined power, oh geez, man. Between the Saudi influence and then them now being backed by Pakistan for all intents and purposes being a tool of Saudi Arabia, that's not good.
Pakistan Sunnis, no, or Shiites. Because
No, Pakistan is 85% Sunnis, 15% Shiites.
And
Uh,
Pakistani leaders have a tendency to get really big smiles when they shake hands with the Saudi Arabians.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is also Sunni, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
Iran is Shiite because they don't like the Saudi Arabians. Iran.
yeah, Iran is mostly Shiites. Saudi
Yeah.
is mostly Sunnis, but there is a Shiite majority in the eastern part.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
That is interesting because, as we know, Saudi Arabia is offering to just build mosques everywhere, but they are not actually offering to take in any of the war refugees. They could build a separate tent city in a month if they wanted to, close to their border with Jordan, for example. We have air-conditioned, piped water, shops, everything. And it's very interesting that they are accusing the West of being Islamophobe, letting people drown, and all that guilt tripping, along with Qatar's Al Jazeera Plus, which is a very nice channel. I recommend everyone to watch it. It's very, very, very informative.
Everyone watch
I
it.
think
Everyone
I
should
sense
see it.
some sarcasm in what you just said.
Yes, thank you for noticing.
I mean, I do think it's interesting. I mean, Saudi Arabia is an extremely no one talks about it, but it's an extremely bigoted country. They deeply dislike their neighbors to the north. They deeply dislike their neighbors to the south.
And they mistreat their Shiite minority, as well as other sort of migrant workers who work in Saudi Arabia, like
Yeah, the Indonesian servant class
Indian.
is something a lot of people
Yeah,
don't talk about.
Yeah, a lot of racism towards them.
Tomorrow. It's really weird. No, it's not weird. Everyone knows it's not weird. What the fuck am I saying? They complain. No, I'm just rambling on. Continue, guys. Sorry about that. No, I just was going to say something stupid and I stopped myself before I said it. I don't want to embarrass myself. Fuck this. I'm in the presence of what I consider royalty, and so I don't want to embarrass myself any further.
Yeah, there's no embarrassment possible here.
Oh, I do, man. I'm so honored to have you guys here. Fucking hell, man. Just awesome. Since
But
no
yeah.
one's joining, we can sort of
Yeah.
wrap this up.
Yeah,
I
that's
think we've
fine.
covered everything. And I want to say again to Will and Hagbard. Oh man, I love you guys. I watch every one of your videos, Hagbard. I can't find your bloody channel. I know I have it here. I'll add it to the description later or tomorrow. It'll be here.
Yeah.
I always do. I have all your names here and whoever attended. I'm disappointed in Angsgard in
That you don't.
Crouch. He didn't come. I sent him his invitation.
He's
I
passed
should
that
have
drunk
sent.
already.
Yeah, I should have sent Nicholas Goroff one, but he's probably too busy. I'll save him for another chat. I don't want to overuse my. Oh, I don't know what to call it.
I think Kraut has a breakfast sherry, so I mean I think he's probably out by now.
Yeah. Oh, I love Crowd, man. He introduced me to you guys. Not you, Hagbard. The other guys in the other Twitter chat. We're in the same. Yeah. So
Yeah, the secret football meetings. Yeah.
yeah, that weird thing, which is awesome. There's awesome people there. I love you, all of you guys. I am just so honored to have you.
Yeah,
So,
it's our
okay, guys. Thank you. I'm going to stop the transmission now. Everyone who's listening to this, me rambling, I apologize and good night.